and my African brother.
I'm African, but I ain't no brother of yours, son.
I manifested this. I manifested this.
At the end of the day, I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, and the people pay to watch that. And if you can create fans by performance, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to put up the best fights and give the fans the show they came here for.
Your favourite fighters fighting on this next pay-per-view?
Della's not fighting.
No. Never mind. It's not Della, it's Izzy.
So how are you feeling? Izzy's coming back. We haven't seen him since, 293?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
mate.
he's back next week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone who was a fan, or particularly anyone who's familiar with Izzy, was particularly impressed by his last performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was quite shocking to see someone of such a caliber. I mean, he's had boring fights, admittedly. There's been the Cannonier fight, the Romero fight, even the Whittaker 2 fight, Vettori. You know, they were all kind of just okay. And the Sean Strickland one was particularly bad because it just looked like he had no idea what to do. And yeah, he said it's injuries, overtraining, overworking, being far too active. But yeah, I'm not inspired to see Izzy massively coming out of the cage. And I think that's
Based off his last performance.
based on his last performance.
Diminished it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are feeling that way. Obviously, he's done great things for us as viewers and the sport. He's been an active champion, which we don't have right now. So I'm kind of two minds. I'm really glad he's taken the time away to get better, to take his mind off things, come back revitalized. However, his last performance against someone you think you would beat quite easily that is suited to him. He had a terrible performance.
I see what you're trying to say is Daddy's hat's fallen off. Yeah, you ever heard that?
Yes.
Yeah, Daddy's hat's fallen. You can't look at him the same way anymore.
Yeah, once you see your father cry,
you're
you're
not
like,
sure. Well, I mean, he's arguably facing. I think he's facing a tougher opponent, if you ask me, because DDP is a lot more well-rounded as well. So if you
tougher than Strickland.
Yeah, I think so. Just for a stylistic perspective. So yeah, if you're an Izzy fan, even the most hardcore Adesanya fan you've ever met in your life, Jason, over here.
Let's calm down a little
I'm not
bit.
even that bothered anymore. This is where it's got to.
I was a big fan, and it's kind of like, okay, let's maybe it's just coming to the end.
For me, a lot of the excitement behind this fight was the rivalry, was the bad blood, right? That these two were going backwards and forwards. It was supposed to be Africa versus Africa, like a huge rivalry matchup. It was supposed to be in Africa, but we're not there. But do you think people are losing interest also because it doesn't really seem to be playing out that way? Or do you think it's going to come fight time, bad blood's back on, baby?
There's been a lot of complaints from people about, is this even the right fight? Like, I know Whittaker's just requested fighting Chimaev, but should that just be what's happening right now?
Chimaev?
Whittaker versus Du Plessis.
Yeah.
Because he's basically just earned his title shot. Or should it be Strickland again? There are a lot of people that are saying that.
He did knock out Whittaker not that long ago. What, one fight ago?
Yeah.
So there is that, right? Understandably, Whittaker's got to sort of bounce back from there, but when you line it up on paper,
Well, Whittaker's been in that horrible position where he couldn't get a reason to fight the champ for a long time. Izzy beat him twice, gets finished in the second round by the next champion. So it's kind of like, yeah, he took a step back, decision Costa, beat up an unranked guy, which a lot of people think, oh, that guy clearly wasn't ready for Whittaker. So it's not the most compelling case, even though a finish can go a long way in Steve Erceg, but I don't think in the middleweight division is like we're so used to having that dominant champion, right? So it's kind of like you want to give that guy new challenges who people he hasn't beat. You don't want to have to go to rematches too soon.
So do you think there's a portion of the fan base that's now also pissed off because they don't even feel like he deserves the fight, along with the bad performance and the lack of bad blood, and now this as well? Wow.
Well, there's a critique you can make for every single one of those matchups.
Yeah.
Like you just said about Whittaker. Well, he just kind of lost to Du Plessis last year. If it's Strickland, he just lost to Du Plessis a few months ago.
Some of these rivalries have sort of died in the water recently. I feel like people sometimes get heated, and then the fight itself, I don't know what it is about this year. It feels like it's not really played out in the same way. Sometimes people hate each other and then they don't want to lose, and so it goes a bit stale. Like we just saw that with Ian Gary's last fight in MVP.
Also, Makaev and Karp as well. Super heated.
Exactly.
Altercations backstage, fighting backstage at the hotel, and they got in there, and it was kind of like everyone was very tentative.
Fight of the year, yeah.
Yeah.
Fight of the year.
Fight of the year.
Yeah.
So
that's a cutting level performance.
Like as a fan, as a long-time fan, I guess you are aware that can happen, but because we saw it in DDP at its last fight with Sean, it's going to be a crazy rivalry, and it was an intense fight, but they put the rivalry to bed, really, going into that one. It became a sporting fight. Going into this one, I just feel like the same things might happen, and that also has kind of made me less excited for it. Like I just want to see two guys that hate each other. Apparently, I don't, but it would be nice. That's why I was sold on initially.
We already had a presser, right? Like a couple of months ago, was it, or maybe not even that long ago?
Yeah, we were just watching that here in the office, and it didn't really get that heated, did it?
I think
it's pretty tame.
Yeah, I think the time in between it'd be like, it's maybe at the time because Izzy was champion then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just beaten Rob, so then he went into the cage to confront him as his next challenger. So, yeah, at the time, because he was doing the whole, I manifested this sort of thing and wearing your T-shirt. And
he loves manifestation, doesn't he? We'll talk about that
Yeah,
earlier.
so like it seemed like a really big deal in his head at the time. And maybe now
he's player one, isn't he?
The fact that he kind of took the chance, fought Strickland because he wanted to fight and then lost, is like kind of... Maybe his motivation has changed as he's taken this time off, and now you're not going to pass up a title fight, are you? But maybe the stakes in it are not the same for Israel anymore, even though some of his best performances are when he has that chip on his shoulder.
I think the rivalry will get considerably more heated by next week. Because I think the thing is, like, it's been like this kind of latent thing that's kind of being talked about. Izzy's been taking some time off. He's been chilling out. Du Plessis hasn't fought since January. It hasn't been like a reality yet. I think once next week happens, those two are going to turn it up. Like, yeah, I think it's going to get ugly again. I think we're going to have some cringe-inducing moments.
I think it only takes one person to make a comment about, because like media is going to be asking about the whole African nature, who comes from where,
of course, yeah.
Who started the argument. So it's only going to take one comment for the other person to react to. It's really interesting how your choice to be an active champion possibly affected one of the better and one of the more engaging storylines in your career that you may have now missed, and it may not perform in the same way that you could have once had.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about now.
Steam's
right?
taken out of it in a lot of ways because of that loss last year. It feels like, I don't know, what is your feeling? Does Adesanya still have it in him? Like, will he be champion?
Well, the thing is, I'm going to go back a little bit. It's like when we was doing all our videos about Izzy and Pereira and their rivalry, that was super exciting. That was one of the best storylines we've had in MMA for a long time. He loses. I'm like, fuck, this guy just has his number. He cannot beat him. And then he comes back. I'm there at a hotel room in Cheshire, 6 a.m., tuning in live to the fight, even though I'm supposed to be on holiday, and like Izzy finally gets his revenge on Pereira, and he was like the biggest thing in the sport. Has a Leon Edwards like speech after his performance. Everyone loves him again. He's on top of the world. Does the bow and arrow, fantastic, and then goes into this just taking this fight against Strickland because he feels that he needs to fight. It takes that like he is the guy status. He can do anything. He can overcome things. To like, is this just the end? Is he 1 foot out the door?
The stakes, though, are the same. It's still for a world title. So
Yes.
you feel like, the stakes are the same as last time. It's strange
do
to
we
see.
care? Okay, put it this way. Dricus' thing was like, I'm going to be the first African-born, African-trained champion, and I'm going to do it from Africa. If Izzy was the champion and then he took the belt from Izzy, would that have meant more, or does it mean the same now?
I mean, of course it would mean more if it was for the title, if it was in Africa.
If it was in Africa.
All these things all mean it would have been more. I think that's the thing that has taken the steam off of it. I mean, I think the real question that comes down to, because, a year ago, you were like, oh yeah, these are the best two guys. That's the reason Izzy confronted him in the ring, because he earned his title shot pretty clearly. Sean Strickland was a last-minute replacement. So people didn't think we famously made bold proclamations. I know I did. I thought Sean Strickland was going to get destroyed by Izzy. That didn't happen. So, like, do we feel Izzy wins in the rematch with Strickland? Do we feel Du Plessis wins in the rematch with Strickland? Are these the best two guys anymore? Even if you do think that, you do have to recognize it's very much a question right now. It was not a question last year. It felt like it felt like the right time, and that injury got in the way of it. And so now we're trying to kind of rekindle something that has gone past, is what it feels like. And I'm not saying they, could have an amazing fight. They absolutely could. And that this could go on to a historic reign for either guy. So yeah, it's a historic thing. Has there ever been three?
I don't
even
Randy
think
Couture.
well, at heavyweight, at middleweight.
Yeah.
Like, has there ever been a
Middleweight.
3-time champion at middleweight? I think he'd be the first of his kind.
For me, I'd never believed less in Israel Adesanya.
I'd agree.
The fact that Sean pushes everybody backwards Everybody. Izzy, like, the Costa fight against DDP, he could not push him backwards, and DDP was the one pushing Sean on the back foot. So to me, I mean, styles make fights, but if Sean's pushing back Izzy and then DDP's pushing back Sean, if you want to do MMA math, I would assume DDP's going to come in there and be able to move forward and put a pace on Izzy and put him against the fence. What happens after that? Anything could happen.
No, I think we're going to need to see a extremely hungry contender like level Israel Adesanya to take down DDP. I don't think we're going to get that. I think we're going to get one foot out the door, take his time to set traps, jabbing, leg kicking, and that's not going to be enough.
Here's the real question. Was Izzy just off that night, or was Strickland on?
I think both.
Both?
I know that seems like an easy scapegoat, but I think it's both. Because, like, have we ever seen Izzy that bad in a fight before? He just couldn't get anything going. It's not like he wasn't trying. It's just anything he was doing, it wasn't coming together.
I think that was mainly all Sean.
Well,
if you ask
Strickland
me.
does this to everybody.
Yeah, I give all the credit to Sean.
He pulled
really.
Costa out of his own style. I think that's the real question. Yeah, it's like, does Izzy have one foot out the door? Did he just meet a style that's really, really difficult?
Awkward, stifling style that takes people out of that game. That's exactly what DDP
Hits harder.
does. Hits harder, has great takedowns, has like submission threats, nasty ground and pound. I mean, there are ways to obviously beat DDP. We've seen him, like you said, awkward. Like he's been hit with a bunch of stuff. He's just got that will and he just walks forward, right? But I mean, I don't know. The question of what happens in the fight, that's always up for speculation. I think more today we were just kind of asking, like, I think you said it, has the steam come off this fight? Like, has the steam gone? Is the kettle still boiling? Has Daddy's hat fallen off?
Is the coffee still dripping?
Is the coffee still?
Is the pot still black?
I just feel like this conversation would and could be very different if there was some legitimate hype promo. And it's not like we always have this discussion about they don't promote their fighters enough, but I think it's like they don't promote events and fights that are going on in a salacious way.
It's the same thing though if we talk about this because it's just
sexual.
They just
sexual way.
Salacious.
It's always the same answer because they haven't got time.
What does that mean?
There was way more space between all of the fights back in the day. So even if they weren't necessarily doing as much promotion back in the day, there's just the amount of space between the big fights just made you feel like the build up was longer and you anticipated for longer. And I don't know, it doesn't even feel like Izzy versus DDP is that big of a fight in the context of the fights we've had this year. And, when it was first lined up, it felt like when it was going to be one of the biggest fights, one of the best rivalries of the modern era. But
can we ask this and like keep it in the final video? Because what I'm really interested in is like for you as the fan, because we're kind of talking about something that we're dancing around, but is the UFC as good as you remember it a couple of years ago, a few years ago? Where is your level of fandom and excitement for these, events? I do think, though, a big part of it, and I think this does happen to a lot of people that work in the industry, they do kind of, get a bit of burnout here and there.
Of course.
For me, if I look back at some of these events that have happened just in the past few months, they actually have been really good.
Yeah, they have.
Like if you take out, the fight nights have been fucking awful. They've been terrible. But 303 was something special. So was 300. 302 was okay, but 299 was really great.
Do you know something else back in the day that used to work? The Ultimate Fighter used to get me hyped for
it's just a shit
Uriah
product.
Faber,
Tough
Cruz,
sucks now.
Bisping, freaking Miller, obviously Rampage Rashad, all of that. But it wasn't about like, hey, let's have the Ultimate Fighters compete. It was about the coaches' rivalry. It was just more promotion for that fight. I don't know if they put Izzy DDP on a season of the Ultimate Fighter, it would make me any more interested anymore. I think once it was like
it really
Gaethje,
just depends, doesn't it? Because like you can still remember good seasons. You can still go back and be like, oh shit, like Rashad and Rampage made you want to see that fight. Like even if you hated the rest of the premise of that show, that got you into it. There is an aspect of Izzy that actually has that. And Dricus, I think that there is an interesting aspect to him because despite the fact that he's arrived on the scene and, got into contendership last year and won the title, he still is a bit new to a lot of fans in terms of like, who actually is the guy outside of press conferences and, made to sit down interviews?
Yeah.
What is he like on a 24/7 basis reality TV show?
Dude, that would have lined up perfectly as well. You put DDP and Izzy on tough instead of Grasso and fucking Shevchenko. That would have been great, and that would have had the effect we're all.
No, I
asking
agree.
for.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I'm
was-
just thinking. All we can think of for the entire Shevchenko Grasso season is the
water.
chapped lips. That's it.
Yeah.
I have
I've
not seen a
not watched
single
it.
moment from that show.
It was around.
Yeah.
I felt like it was around when they did Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez, and it sort of became, well, this is actually quite boring, even though these two are going to fight for the title, and it's almost detracting and holding up the division. And after that point, I feel like all the other Ultimate Fighters were kind of shit. And they stopped kind of promoting big fights through it almost as well. So it's kind of obviously we're getting away from the format of it now.
No, you're right though. Yeah, like
it was.
when you're talking about promotional materials. When was the last like actually interesting Ultimate Fighter?
yeah, man.
Set of coaches.
Bisping Miller.
Yeah, that might
was the
literally be
last
it. Yeah.
one. Like, what would you have done to promote this fight better?
I like the idea of what you said.
Send them to Africa.
Yeah, and send to do it in Africa, do a face-off, something like that. Because there has been such time away, DDP hasn't fought in a long time, Izzy's took a big break, and now we're trying to rekindle this thing that once was. We just need that extra little bit.
What I kind of find ironic now is that if you ask Dana White about boxing, he'll tell you every fight they promote like a going out of sale business, you know, and it's like, well, I would prefer that, you know, like boxing, like it's like, oh no, you have to have 3 months or like more than that because we have to promote the fight. We have to announce it and then build it slowly and you know, because they want to sell it out. We get the complete opposite with that with the UFC. We get a week of promotion. Like we knew the fight was happening. We had that press conference. It's fair enough. But aside from that, that was also lumped in with other stuff. So it's just the complete opposite of this boxing model now. We're only getting further away from it. And I feel like in some ways we should try and hook in some of that, you know? Thanks for watching the podcast, everybody. I'm back.
Did you say podcast?
I said podcast.
I love a good old podcast.
Podcast. Unedited version is just $2.99 if you want to join the membership program. Become a member, receive a belt, begin your training today, join the cult, go to L. Ron Hubbard's mansion, get yourself a free wife for $2.99.